Now, as we earlier reported, in the coming hours, the government is going to have to make some decisions on shutting down certain facilities and businesses. It looks like political and economic considerations are at play here. But ultimately, this decision has to be made on health considerations. Well, to help us with that, joining us now from Kfar Saba is Professor Hagai Levine from the School of Public Health, Hadassah University, and he's chairman of the Israel Association of Public Health Physicians. Thank you for joining us, Professor Levine. Let me ask you, as I said before, the government now has to make a decision. In your view, based on the evidence we have, should pools, beaches, gyms, and restaurants be shut down completely or allowed to remain open in some capacity?
Hi, Calev. Good evening. Here from Rehovot this time,
okay.
Saba. Listen, the process is the most important thing. I know I will answer your question, but it's like, the pools, yes or no. That's not the question. The question is how we collect and show the data, the evidence, how we make a transparent, collaborative process of decision-making and getting the public trust and the public engaged in actually implementing the decisions. That's the key issue. Now, I testified in front of the parliament saying that I don't see any epidemiological logic in closing the beaches over the weekend. Do you think that the virus is not working on the weekend or heavily working on the weekend? It does not make any sense. And the beaches, that's the safest place. If you are at open air, there is a much lower risk of transmission. So yes, we supported opening the beaches, including in the weekend, opening of the swimming pools, as long as you make sure that people are not crowded too much. With the restaurants, that's a different story. If we have time, I can elaborate.
Well, let me ask you, I guess the logic was the beaches are more crowded on the weekends. But leave that aside. What about gyms? In many cases, an enclosed space, people are exhaling more. Should gyms be closed?
So the point is that you must have a balance and not only look about the transmission. For a long time, and we are not in such a bad situation as some people, especially not from the health sector, but from the security sector, are trying to portray. We need physical activity. On the other hand, we should not neglect the issue that in gyms, where you do physical activity, you breathe heavily, it's closed space. We know for sure from Israel and other countries that there is a risk of transmission and even outbreaks from gyms. So either you can have a very strict and not crowded conditions in order to enable opening of the gyms, or you can decide, okay, I'm closing them. Both decisions are okay from our point of view of public health professionals, but don't do it like without any judgment. If you do it, you also need to provide some compensation for the owners of the gyms and for the participants in the gyms. And for example, you can support outside gyms. Why not provide public spaces for outside gyms, which is completely possible with the Israeli weather? So, as we usually do in Israel, try to think creative and find solutions that are both good for health and for the economy.
Right. It's funny you say that because we have seen these outdoor sort of gyms or workout areas on the beach closed off, which does seem sort of counterintuitive. Yes, I agree with you. But let me just ask you, because the government, you're right, has not been transparent about figures. We are starting, at least in the media, to see some statistics. I saw 60% of transmissions occur in the home, although people must be getting it somewhere. I mean, the figures that are out there, what do they tell you about how COVID-19 in this second wave is being transmitted?
First of all, not every case is going epidemiological investigation in Israel. We know, we just had today the annual conference, which was mainly digital, of the Israeli Association of Public Health Physicians. And the people from the ministry spoke. They said, we are missing 2,000 researchers for the epidemiological teams in Israel. We are missing physicians and nurses. We must, at least now, after we called for years, put more resources and more human resources in public health services then we would have the data. Now, I do say, we only look under the lamp. It's easy to find when there is transmission at homes, but you may have transmission elsewhere, which is much harder to find, especially if you don't have enough resources for epidemiological investigation. Still, if we have evidence, and we have some evidence for transmission in gyms, for transmission in educational facilities, for transmission in restaurants, it means that at least there is some transmission going on. You need to take that into consideration and not say, yes, it's only a few. No, this is only the tip of the iceberg.
All right. Well, hopefully the government will take those factors into consideration. Professor Hagai Levine, speaking to us from Gov't. Thank you for joining us.